It is perhaps worth reflecting that at the heart of the word Parliament
every day, and I do not know how he managed to do that. But he would also tell me all sorts of anecdotes.
After Queen Elizabeth II's private residence was reportedly transferred to Lady Louise Camilla, discussions within royal circles quickly followed. The move, while official in nature, drew attention across the United Kingdom and prompted questions about how royal properties are managed today. On January 28, 2026, Clarence House released a short public statement confirming that one of the lesser-known royal estates had changed hands. Though the announcement was brief, it marked the first official acknowledgement of a property that had long been mentioned in royal archives and speculation. According to public reports, the estate was granted to Lady Louise, granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II. The property, known privately among trusted aides as G.R. House, is located deep within the Scottish Highlands, near the Cairngorms. Covering about 200 acres, G.R. House remains largely hidden from public access, surrounded by forest and distant from major roads. Satellite images reveal only a modest structure blending naturally with the landscape. Unlike Balmoral or Sandringham, this residence was never intended as a public landmark. Instead, it appears to have been maintained as a quiet, private retreat within the royal portfolio. While the decision has prompted curiosity and commentary, official details about the estate's history and future use remain limited. Public records indicate that the land was acquired in 1952, soon after Queen Elizabeth II began her reign. Rather than being registered directly under her sovereign title, reports suggest it was purchased through a holding arrangement linked to the estate of the Queen Mother. This structure appears to have kept the property separate from standard royal estate listings, positioning it as a private retreat rather than an official residence.
Why do they always go round and round when you want to talk?
Former staff members have described the house as a quiet refuge where the late Queen could spend time away from public duties. According to these accounts, it offered a setting with greater privacy than more well-known royal residences. Not all members of the royal family were said to have shared the same attachment to the property. Various reports indicate that some preferred other estates, visiting the surrounding countryside only occasionally. Over time, the house remained relatively low profile within the broader royal portfolio. In the period leading up to the recent announcement, media outlets reported that questions were raised about the estate's legal standing. However, long-standing private arrangements appear to have clarified ownership, limiting further dispute. As with many royal properties, much of the detail remains handled discreetly, leaving observers to interpret the significance for themselves. What distinguishes G.R. House is not its architecture or landscape, but what it is reported to contain. According to various accounts, the residence holds a private collection of handwritten journals, correspondence, film reels, and audio recordings. These materials were not included in the official royal archives and were not prepared for public display. The documents are said to span several decades, including letters exchanged with world leaders and personal reflections written after significant historical events. Some reports also mention recorded messages intended for family members. While the full contents have not been publicly detailed, the collection is widely described as personal rather than political in nature. Under established archival practices, reigning monarchs can designate certain materials as private. Once assigned to a specific heir, such items are generally understood to remain outside institutional or state collections. Public reporting indicates that Lady Louise was named as the beneficiary in this instance. Observers have noted that she has maintained a relatively low public profile compared to other senior royals. Between 2018 and 2021, she was said to have spent extended periods in Scotland, which some commentators believe may have strengthened her connection to the property. As with many aspects of royal life, much of the detail remains private, allowing for interpretation rather than certainty. Reports suggest that during visits to Scotland, Lady Louise often spent extended time at the Highland residence after other family members had departed. Accounts describe these periods as quiet and routine, focused less on formal engagements and more on private reflection. According to individuals familiar with the household, she would accompany Queen Elizabeth II on walks across the estate and spend evenings indoors reviewing personal papers. These materials were reportedly not official state documents, but private letters, photographs, and written reflections accumulated over many years. Former staff members have described Lady Louise's approach as attentive and measured. Rather than seeking visibility, she was said to listen carefully and engage thoughtfully. Observers close to the family have suggested that these shared periods may have strengthened trust between them, particularly through a shared interest in history and continuity. In autumn 2021, following the funeral of Prince Philip, media reports indicate that a private legal arrangement was finalized concerning the future of the Highland property, known internally as GR House. The decision was not publicly announced at the time. As with many royal matters, the full reasoning behind the arrangement has not been formally detailed. According to media reporting, the legal structure surrounding the Highland estate was designed to keep it separate from broader institutional changes. The arrangement reportedly included detailed provisions outlining when ownership would formally transfer and how the property would be protected from incorporation into Crown estate management. Some commentators have referred to the agreement by an informal nickname, Article 31, said to reference a meaningful date during Queen Elizabeth II's reign. Public sources suggest that only a small number of senior advisors and family members were aware of the document's existence, reflecting its private nature. By 2024, questions were said to have emerged in internal discussions about whether all royal holdings had been fully documented within official disclosures. Reports indicate that these inquiries were framed broadly, focusing on administrative clarity rather than any single property. As with many royal matters, much of this activity remains based on accounts from unnamed sources and has not been formally detailed. Observers have also noted that discussions about legacy and long-term stewardship of royal residences have become increasingly relevant in recent years. In January 2026, reporting suggests that the issue was raised during a private meeting in Scotland, marking another step in the evolving conversation around the estate's future. According to reporting at the time, a proposal was introduced that outlined the possibility of placing the Highland estate under a form of collaborative stewardship. The concept reportedly included ideas such as cultural preservation initiatives, environmental research programs, architectural restoration, and limited heritage access. Supporters described it as a balanced approach combining conservation with public benefit.
Charge about. It was all very sort of laid back and happy, and we used to go.
However, some commentators noted that such a structure could also bring administrative influence over a property long regarded as private. Media accounts suggest that preliminary reviews may have taken place, including consultations on environmental impact and financial planning. These discussions were not publicly confirmed in detail. When the proposal was presented to the king, reports indicate that he requested a formal review rather than offering an immediate response. Legal advisors are said to have examined historical ownership records and prior agreements dating back decades. Meetings were reportedly delayed while documentation was assessed. In late January 2026, following internal consultations, it was concluded that the estate was not available for reassignment. A brief statement referenced an earlier private settlement outside Crown jurisdiction. No additional specifics were released, and much of the process remains described only through media sources rather than official disclosure. According to accounts from those familiar with the discussions, the outcome of the January meeting in Scotland was clear. The existing legal structure surrounding the Highland estate would remain unchanged. Reports describe the atmosphere as measured and procedural, with the king relying on established agreements rather than entering into extended debate. Several days later, in January 2026, Buckingham Palace released a formal notice addressing the status of the property. The statement confirmed that the secluded Highland residence had not been placed under a charitable trust or shared custodianship. Instead, it had been granted in full to Lady Louise Windsor. Public reporting indicates that Queen Elizabeth II finalized a private legal document in autumn 2021 outlining the transfer. The arrangement, described as protected under long-standing legal conventions, named Lady Louise as the sole owner of the estate known internally as GR House. The bequest is said to include the land, the residence itself, and associated contents held on site. It also reportedly grants authority over access and future management decisions. Beyond the palace's brief confirmation, few additional details have been formally disclosed, leaving much of the context to be interpreted through available records and media coverage. According to media summaries of the late Queen's private testament, one clause emphasized that the Highland property was intended to remain a private sanctuary rather than a public venue. Commentators have suggested that this language reflected her long-standing distinction between institutional assets and personal holdings. Following the palace's announcement, discussion reportedly intensified among those who had anticipated alternative arrangements for the estate. Prior conversations, described in press coverage, had explored possibilities such as regional heritage initiatives or limited cultural events in the surrounding area. However, the formal confirmation of sole ownership appeared to bring those ideas to a halt. Some observers had expected the property might eventually be integrated into a broader management structure or placed under shared oversight. Instead, the legal framework outlined in the testament indicated a clear and individualized transfer. Legal analysts quoted in several outlets have noted that the document was structured with care, limiting grounds for reinterpretation. As a result, the estate's status appears firmly defined under existing private arrangements. Beyond the brief official references, further details remain confidential, leaving public understanding shaped largely by available reporting rather than direct disclosure. In the aftermath of the announcement, commentators observed that the decision underscored a distinction within royal structures. Public service does not necessarily determine private inheritance. The transfer appeared to follow previously established legal intentions rather than contemporary expectations. Reports indicate that Lady Louise had been preparing for added responsibility well before the confirmation became public. During the summer of 2025, local residents near Glenmore noted periodic visits by a young woman traveling quietly, accompanied by minimal security. According to media accounts, she expressed interest in Highland land management and environmental research. Sources cited in coverage suggest that, behind the scenes, she consulted with archival and legal advisors to better understand estate administration. This reportedly included reviewing preservation standards, land compliance requirements, and broader governance considerations tied to private ownership. One individual familiar with the process described her approach as methodical and focused. When the transfer formally took effect, it was first reflected in routine land registry documentation. A palace statement followed shortly afterward. As with earlier developments, much of the context remains based on reporting rather than detailed public disclosure, leaving observers to assess its broader significance for themselves. Following the transfer, commentators noted that Lady Louise's role had evolved. In addition to her academic pursuits, she was now described as the custodian of a private historical collection operating outside standard institutional structures. Analysts observed that this responsibility related specifically to personal legacy matters, rather than constitutional authority. Public reporting suggests that Princess Anne played a key administrative role during the transition. Accounts indicate that she helped oversee practical arrangements, including staff continuity and the secure handling of sensitive materials. Some sources describe her approach as direct and procedural, reflecting her long-standing experience with royal operations. When questions later arose through informal channels, Anne was said to have emphasized that legally executed wishes are generally upheld under established conventions. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, has also been mentioned in coverage as offering support during this period, though details of her involvement remain limited in public accounts. As with other aspects of the estate's transfer, much of the information available comes from media sources rather than detailed official statements. Media accounts suggest that, rather than engaging publicly with speculation, family representatives focused on internal review and security. Reports indicate that financial documentation related to the estate was examined, and additional precautions were taken to protect the property's privacy. In late 2025, coverage referenced concerns about unauthorized attempts to gather information about the estate's boundaries, including the reported use of remote devices near surrounding land. According to these accounts, the situation was addressed without incident, and no breach of the inner grounds was confirmed. Specific details have not been formally disclosed. During the same period, some outlets reported that discussions took place about the timing of the public announcement. Prince Edward was said to have supported proceeding in accordance with the existing legal framework. As previously established, the deed and private testament remained in force. Following the public confirmation, there were no formal celebrations or ceremonies. Observers described the transition as measured and procedural. On February 6th, Lady Louise was seen attending a service at St. Columba's Chapel, a historic church located a few miles from the Highland estate. The visit was low profile and not accompanied by an official statement, leaving its significance open to interpretation.
The Governor-General, Your Excellency, and the Prime Minister for your invitation to come and join you today in what is evidently
St. Columba's Chapel, a historic stone church shaped by centuries of Highland weather, provided a quiet setting for Lady Louise's appearance in early February. According to local reports, she arrived without formal procession or visible media coordination. A single vehicle dropped her nearby, and she walked the remaining distance alone. Observers noted a distinctive brooch on her navy coat. The design reportedly combined Scottish heather and an English rose, centered with a small sapphire. Photographs later circulated online appeared to show an engraved phrase on the reverse, "Steadfast beyond applause." Historians cited by several outlets suggested the wording closely resembled language found in private notes attributed to Queen Elizabeth II, though this connection has not been formally confirmed. Inside the chapel, Lady Louise placed white flowers beneath a memorial plaque honoring her grandmother's service. The gathering, described as a modest community event, included local parish members and volunteers. In brief remarks recorded by attendees, she stated, "The Crown entrusted this place to me is not a prize to display. It is a responsibility to protect." She added, "We safeguard it with care, even when it asks for patience rather than praise." The video circulated widely online, prompting varied interpretations of its tone and meaning. Footage from the chapel appearance was widely shared online, becoming one of the more discussed royal clips of the year. After concluding her remarks, Lady Louise briefly acknowledged a memorial inscription attributed to Queen Elizabeth II. "Duty gives purpose to power, not the other way around." Commentators noted the symbolism, though interpretations varied. Later that day, Princess Anne issued a short public message stating, "Lady Louise does not speak for ambition, she speaks for continuity." The note drew attention for its clarity and timing. In the days that followed, media outlets reported that King Charles III adjusted his schedule and traveled to Scotland for private meetings. Queen Camilla was also photographed in London, though no statement accompanied the images. Coverage suggested that family members were holding internal discussions, as is common after significant announcements. Catherine, Princess of Wales, shared a brief handwritten message online reading, "Inheritance is not ownership, it is stewardship." The post generated substantial engagement across social platforms. Royal correspondents later observed that Lady Louise's role, while not constitutional, appeared to carry growing cultural visibility. Some aides quoted in reporting suggested that senior family members viewed the development as aligned with long-standing values of service and discretion. As with much royal coverage, interpretations continue to reflect both confirmed details and informed commentary. Shortly after the chapel appearance drew widespread attention, Queen Camilla introduced a new initiative titled Service in the Modern Age. Launched at Windsor Castle, the exhibition highlighted her charitable work through photographs, recorded remarks, and personal testimonials. Some commentators noted the timing, as it followed closely behind reports of a joint archival project involving Lady Louise and Princess Anne focused on historical preservation. In her remarks, Camilla emphasized the importance of visible public service. When later asked about the broader discussion, Princess Anne responded, "Understanding does not always require spectacle." The king did not attend the exhibition opening, citing a prior engagement. Public response to the display was mixed, with some observers praising its presentation and others comparing it to the more understated tone of recent events in Scotland. Social media engagement increased again after Catherine, Princess of Wales, shared an image of Lady Louise and Princess Anne reviewing archival materials, captioned, "Preserving quietly." Reports of private discussions within the family remain unconfirmed. The exhibition concluded earlier than initially scheduled, officially described as a routine adjustment to Windsor's calendar. In the weeks that followed, the official royal website introduced a feature page titled Enduring Service, The Unseen Years. Credited to Lady Louise Windsor and Princess Anne, the page highlighted lesser-known initiatives and personal correspondence from past decades. At the top appeared a line attributed to Queen Elizabeth II, "Dignity outlasts display." Commentators suggested the project reflected a broader emphasis on continuity and quiet service. Several newspapers described Lady Louise as embodying elements of the late Queen's personal approach, though not in any constitutional sense. Universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, were reported to have extended invitations for her to speak on leadership and public responsibility. International institutions were also mentioned in coverage, though details remain limited. A BBC survey released in early February indicated that a majority of respondents expressed support for the possibility of Lady Louise taking on a more defined public role in the future. As with all polling, interpretations vary, but the results added to ongoing discussion about her evolving visibility. Polling released in early February indicated rising public approval for Lady Louise. Shortly afterward, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles III had privately discussed the possibility of granting her an expanded formal role, potentially including a royal title and responsibilities connected to cultural preservation and civic engagement. Reports suggested that such a position would involve increased public duties and security arrangements, though no final decision was announced. Commentary indicated mixed perspectives within royal circles, with some emphasizing opportunity and others noting the weight of long-term expectations tied to formal status. Around the same time, remarks made during a U.S. television appearance by Meghan Markle prompted online debate after she referenced recognition and public service in general terms. While no names were mentioned, media outlets drew connections, fueling discussion across social platforms. In response to speculation, Princess Anne and Prince Edward released a brief statement noting that Lady Louise had not sought advancement and had undertaken responsibilities when asked. Public reaction remained varied, reflecting differing views on the evolving role of younger royals. In a subsequent broadcast, Lady Louise announced the creation of the Grey House Trust, described as an independent foundation dedicated to preserving historical archives and supporting emerging leaders engaged in community service. During her remarks, she stated, "Leadership is not about being seen, it is about being steady." The address drew significant online viewership. When asked about the possibility of accepting a formal royal title, she expressed appreciation for the king's confidence, but indicated that, for the present, she would continue using her current style. Palace sources later confirmed that a private exchange of letters took place between the king and Lady Louise, though the contents were not released in full. Commentators have suggested that these developments reflect an evolving conversation about visibility, service, and identity within the modern monarchy. Some observers have informally referred to her as a guardian of the Highland estate, though such descriptions remain symbolic rather than official. How might her role continue to develop in the years ahead? If you found this overview helpful, consider subscribing for more balanced discussions on royal history and current events.